Well, hello. Fair warning, this usually takes me about 2 hours. So buckle up. All right. So introduction to Excel. You will notice that in my notes on my page, I have my title of my lecture as It's Excel's Way or the Highway. So there's only Excel's way of doing things. And what I mean by that is Excel has a lot of built-in, programmed-in assumptions about the way the world works. And you have to understand those, learn the way that Excel thinks, which is my shorthand for how the people who wrote the program designed it. The program is designed to make things easy for you, but it is only easy after you learn to think like Excel. So that's what a bunch of this is about. So you already know how to use the computer, you already know how to use the mouse, you know how to right click, you know how the ribbon works, which is going to be very similar in Excel to how it was in Word. And then when we go on to PowerPoint and Access, it's going to be very similar. The specific details are different because it's a different type of program. First of all, you notice it's green instead of blue. That's your first clue. And then down here, we have all these boxes instead of just large areas to type things. So Excel is based on cells, unlike Word, where everything is a paragraph. Things are based on paragraphs. Here, everything is based on a cell. So that's a big wide cell. That's a regular sized or default sized cell. These are all cells. And a cell is an intersection of a column and a row. So these are rows, those are columns. If you are talking to a Word user, an accountant maybe, regular people, normal people. If you're talking to programmers or database people, this is a field and that is a record. So field, otherwise known as column, record, otherwise known as a row. And that is a difference in dialect in our language of geek. So some people say one thing for one, and in one context, it's called one thing. In another context, it's called something else. So log that away in your brain as a definition. So we have a cell. And what is this cell? This cell is A2. There's the name box. This cell is E5. So the letter comes first, just like in math, the X axis comes first, and then the Y axis. One thing that's different is if this was actually math, this would be E-5 because the y-axis is going down. It doesn't work that way in Excel. These are all positive numbers, so it's very similar to math, slightly different. So that's a cell. This is a range of cells. So this is the range F4 through I14. So F4 through I14. And I would write that as F4 colon I, what did I say, 14 or something? So when you read this as F4 through I14, for example. So this is a range, and it is a rectangle, and you specify the top left corner, no matter where you start. It doesn't really matter where you start. You're still going to specify top left corner down to bottom right-hand corner. And that describes this rectangle, just like in math. Any questions on that? Okay. You will notice that one of these cells, when I highlight a range, is white, and the rest of them are gray. The first cell I highlight is white, and the rest are gray. The first cell is the active cell. That is important because computers can only have one answer for any question. So if I start to type, the computer has to know where to put that information. So if I type, it goes there. It doesn't go in all of these cells. It doesn't do anything else. So that's not usually very significant, but it is a thing. When you're highlighting, sometimes people don't realize that they've highlighted 4 cells in this instance. A lot of times I'll do an example, I'll highlight several things, and then I'll see the students only highlighting part of it. And it's because they don't notice that that first cell is actually highlighted. You notice this green line going around all 3? All 3 of these guys are highlighted. Okay, as I'm highlighting and flipping around here, you'll notice my mouse shape changes. The mouse shape is extremely important. So this big fat white plus highlights. So if I put in some information here, if I grab the edge of the cell, I get these arrows, this compass rows. It goes north, south, east, west, up, down, left, right. And if I drag it, it doesn't move. So I can drag this wherever, and it doesn't move. And if I grab the extend handle, notice bottom right-hand corner is different. Bottom right-hand corner has a little green box in it. That is a handle. If I grab the handle and I drag it some direction, it will do an extend or a fill. And since I've got text in here, it just copies it. Okay. Also, up here, I have a mouse shape. So if I come up here and do a double click between these 2 columns, I can do a size to fit. Of course, I have nothing in there. Let me put something in there. Now I'll do a size to fit. See how it snaps over and makes the column as wide as it needs to be for the widest thing, the widest cell. Okay, inside of cells, you have data. Data always fits inside of one and only one cell. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. And I'm going to say that over and over again. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter what you think is going on. It only matters what Excel thinks is going on. So if I type in here and I type some text, it's automatically left justified. If I type a number, it automatically is right justified because that's how these things are in the wild. Numbers line up on decimal points and they tend to be, that's over to the right. Text in English and a lot of languages is on the left. If you have a keyboard in a different language that goes to the right, like Hebrew, then this is different. But we're doing English at the moment. Okay, so that is text. This is a number. There are only text and numbers. So Excel can do math on numbers, and it treats text differently. This is very important. It can cause you all kinds of exciting problems. If you wanted to make a chart and you said that your dog was 15 pounds, 14 pounds, you'll notice that this is over to the left. So I may be thinking 14, and I may be thinking I can do math on that. What if my dog gains 2 pounds? How much will it be? What if I want to make a chart and compare this dog to other dogs, like on your final? Snoopy versus Clifford, the big red dog, versus somebody else. I will not be able to make a chart on 14 space LBS, because that is a string of text. Does that make sense? So I would need to do something different. I'd need to put just a 14 here and then put something on the top like pounds above my stack of I don't know, whatever my other data is. I would have to organize this differently so that these things are actually numbers. Makes a big difference. Okay. When I have things that look like they might be a combination, okay, I have a couple things going on here. First of all, this has letters and it has numbers, and Excel treats this like text. If you want to check what it's thinking by default, I can make this column wider, and I haven't changed my alignment, so this is the default, and you'll notice it sticks it on the left. So this is text. There are some exciting things, though, that you have to be aware of. If you have a number at the beginning of a string of text, Excel has an exception. It has a thing that it does. If I extend down, it will mostly copy it exactly, but it will increment that number. See that? See how my number is changing? So that can be an issue. But this allows me to do things like give people L numbers. So there's student number 1 at LCC. And then there's the rest of my students. So this, having the street address changed, is not helpful. That's bad. You need to watch out for that. You need to make sure that doesn't happen to you. But when you're assigning ID numbers to things, customer numbers, product numbers, etc., this is extremely helpful. So you want to be aware of those things. All right. Numbers don't always look like numbers. So if I put in a date, well, let's say I just sort of am making a mistake. Like, let's say I want to say 7 divided by 23. 7 divided by 23. And I think, oh, I'm going to divide. Nope. No, I'm not, because that's not how math works. That is not how math works in Excel. When I put in 7/23, it says, oh, you want to put in a date. And it's like, oh, really? Did I? Oh, okay, fine. And it does this to it by default. That's the default date format. You will notice, please come and notice, that up in the formula bar, it says 7-23-2020, which is not what I typed. That's not what I typed. This is not what I typed. And that's a clue that something different is going on. That's a clue that what I'm seeing is not what Excel is thinking. Also, this is right justified, and I told you emphatically that if you have letters plus numbers in the same cell, that it is text. And I also told you that text goes to the left by default. And now, am I lying to you? And this is all on the right? Look at that thing over there doing the opposite of what I said. Okay, well, this is a number. It has a formatting. It has a formatting by default that makes it look like a date. However, Excel still sees that as a number. So these are layers. There are layers. There's a formatting layer that can go on top of something. There can be a formula layer that I think of as underneath what you see on the screen. So here's the actual number. So today's date is 44,035. Who cares? Well, if you are an accountant and you need to figure out, has it been 60 days since people bought this thing? Do I need to send them out a letter saying, hey, you need to pay us some money? I need to be able to calculate today's date plus a certain number minus a certain number. What is 90 days from today. It's really hard to figure out because we have months with 28 and 30 and 31 and sometimes 29, and you know, it's not easy. Humans can't do that in their heads. So it's very nice that we can do math with dates. In order to do that, they have to be numbers. This is just how it works. So how does it work? I can find out by putting in a 1. So I can just do some Sherlock Holmes here, some deductive reasoning, and I can say, okay, if that's today, I wonder what that means. So I'm going to put in a 1, and I'm going to say, why don't you tell me what you think 1 is? I'm going to format it as a long date. Excel thinks 1 is January 1st, 1900. Well, that's interesting. I wonder what -1 is. -1 is big fat error. What are you doing? Put the crack pipe down. You can't get there from here. No, Okay, so I got the big railroad tracks. Dates and times that are negative or too large, so negative or too large, are shown as these kind of railroad tracks, okay? So it's like, if you need to do dates before 1900, you're going to have to do them like in a different program or something, because Excel, time starts for Excel on January 1st, 1900. So if I want to know how many days till Christmas, I can put in 1225, and then I can say how many days are left equals, say this is a sentence. I'll do more on this later. Let me try again. How many days before Christmas? That's this cell. Click, equals Christmas, minus sign, only once, on the keyboard, today's date, and hit enter. 3rd of June. My answer is the 3rd of, wow, what? What? My answer is the 3rd of June. Oh my gosh, Michael, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh wait, hang on. What if I change it to a number? 155 days. Okay. So you saw how I got a wonky answer there? Excel's trying to do what I want. I have a number here, formatted as a number. I have one formatted as a date, so it tries to continue with what I was doing. So it is important to understand what Excel's thinking so that you can get usable information. And I can switch this back to being a date. So I can say this date minus that date is 155. And I would probably get rid of the number of decimal points because we're probably talking whole dates. Okay. So the fact that these things are actually numbers allows me to do math with dates, which is very important for a lot of businesses, a lot of different applications. And if you simply want to know what is 90 days from today, you can say today, and I can put it in this way. Since this is on video and you guys can rewind, I'm going to go ahead and flagrantly jump around a bit. Today happens to be equal sign today and parentheses, because that is how all functions are organized. Equal sign, and then a word, and then parentheses, which may or may not have anything in them. But those 3 components are critical. So I can say today, now I come over here and I say, actually I could just put it in here. I could say today plus 90. Boink. That's October 21st. What's tomorrow? Mathematically, what is tomorrow relative to today? Today plus what? Nobody's saying anything because we're recording. Okay. Today plus 1 is tomorrow. Yes? Yeah, they're holding up fingers. Okay, cool. And there we go. So there's my answer. So being able to do math with these things is super duper cool. Okay, I'm going to, let's see, text versus number. I did that left and right. So text is on the left, numbers are on the right. By default, that's a good clue. You can fiddle around with that, but that's the default and it gives you a clue. Oh, one last thing about dates before we wander off. Notice how, even if I only put in month and date, so I put in 12/25 for this, it always puts a 4-digit year. All modern programs always use 4-digit years because that Y2K bug thing that in 2020 a lot of people look back on and say, oh, that wasn't a big deal. Oh, that was kind of overblown. Yes, it was a big deal. No, it wasn't overblown. And guess what? It is still with us. We are still having to deal with the whole Y2K issue. It has never gone away. It is still with us. And let me show you. If I'm thinking of a year like, let's put today, in the 30s, what am I thinking? You know, if we say in the 30s, a lot of times we think 1930, yeah? But I could mean 2030. What's going to happen? Oh, 1930. Huh. Well, that's interesting. Well, but when I put 7/23 with nothing, it says this year because it always goes and looks at the clock. See my clock down here? It looks at the clock. It assumes this year. And that's all year. So if I put in a January, it's going to say this year. If I put in December, it's going to say this year. So it's not looking forward. It's looking at this year as your clock. If your clock is wrong, if your system clock, your Windows system clock, or your Chrome system clock, or your Mac system clock is wrong, everything else will look at it and be the same wrong. Okay, so what if I put in 7/23 35, 1935. Where's the cusp date? Oh, 29. I should go for 29. 7/23/29. Is that where the cusp is today? Yeah. Okay. That is the cusp date. A cusp is when something changes from one thing to another thing. It's that transition point. So if I put in numbers from 0 to 29 for the year, Excel will assume I mean 20. I mean 2001, 2010, 2020, up to 2029. If I put in numbers larger than that, it will assume 1930, 1931, 1940, etc. Does that make sense? So that is its natural assumption that it makes in order to deal with the Y2K issue. And every 5 years or so, this date changes. So soon, I would expect that this date will change and will go up to 35. When I was first doing this, when I worked with Norton and Symantec back during the year 2000, we had a utility that checked programs to find out what their dates were, because every program, every vendor has the ability to choose different dates for this, and they do. So it's something that you kind of want to pay attention to. So just put that in the back of your brain and kind of remember if something strange happens to you with regard to dates. Okay, tabs and sheets. This is sheet number 1 by default. This Excel is referred to, they refer to their files as workbooks as opposed to Word, which refers to them as documents, and PowerPoint refers to their files as presentations. This is a workbook, and it can have multiple sheets. So I've kind of used up my easy to view area here. So I might want to go on to another sheet, and it gives me a clean piece of paper. So I might want to use that so that my sheets don't get really, really long and I don't have to scroll forever. However, be aware that in the real world, Excel spreadsheets do tend to be huge. This thing can go on for thousands of rows and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of columns. So they can be absolutely enormous. And that also has to do with printing, which I'm going to add to my list of things. So these things can be enormous. And generally speaking, I find Excel much easier to use in real life than in homework. Because in real life, I know what I want to do. I know why I want to do it. And it makes much more sense. When I'm trying to understand a homework assignment using Excel, first I have to spend a bunch of time trying to understand what they're talking about, trying to figure out what it is they're asking me to do. Then I try to figure out how to do it. So there's some extra steps in there that are not natural. So the homework Excel, the spreadsheets are very tiny. They usually fit on one screen. And it's usually harder than in real life. This is what I have found. Okay, so with sheets and tabs are kind of the same thing here. I can make multiple different sheets, and I can also do math between sheets. So I can have 12 sheets here, one for each month. Then I can have a 13th sheet that is my summary to add up everything for the year. And I can add up things, total things across all of my sheets very, very easily. So I can do math across sheets very easily. I would encourage you to always use more sheets instead of attempting to link files. I do not like to link files because in my experience, people move the files around and the links get broken. And you spend all of your time constantly telling people, well, you have to put these things in the same folder, or if you're going to update this, you have to update both parts or all 3 parts or all 15 parts. I find that in practice, I don't usually see that working very well. Of course, as a tech support person, I get all the people who are having problems, right? So maybe I just don't see all the people who it's working for. In fact, I've never seen somebody where it worked. So I've never seen a positive experience trying to link a bunch of these sheets together. So I just make multiple sheets inside the same file. I find that works way better. Resizing things. I have down here my zoom, and I can zoom all over the place, which is super useful. If I want to resize things when I'm printing, I can also scale my printing. And one of the really neat things is I can tell it to just all fit on one page. So if I go into print, I'll see my print preview. And I can come down here, and there's different ways of doing it. There's this stuff. This is the newer dialog box, which I don't like as well. This stuff changes over time. This stays the same. This has been the same for literally for decades. So I usually go here because this dialog box, I only have to learn this dialog box one time. So I can just say, hey, fit it all on one page and don't ask me any stupid questions. Okay? You know, I don't want to play the game of, oh, what if I do 95%? Oh, wait, let's see, I can only go up and down by 5. So maybe I'll put in 96 and look at it, and then I'll put in 97 and look at it. You know this? It's very annoying. I can just say, hey, fit it all on 1 page wide by 1 page tall. Don't ask me any stupid questions, just do it. And it says, okay, and it does shrink it. And now everything is fitting. So this stuff that was falling off the edge, that would have been on a second page. So if I go back and I put it back to 100%, I have 2 pages. So down here at the bottom, notice how it says 1 of 2. My second page is going to print with just these 2 things orphaned on the second page, not making any sense. I'm going to be super frustrated. Okay. So in Excel, the way we deal with these things, because these sheets can be huge. So you want to decide how things are going to be sliced up. This sheet is enormous. It would cover potentially many, many sheets of paper. And you want to decide it has to be sliced into 8.5 by 11 pieces to come out of the printer. And you get to choose how you want to do that. One of the ways is with scaling. And again, I don't like that interface. I go to page setup. Okay, so a super common thing to do is you turn it landscape. And here's a picture. Portrait is this direction. Landscape is that direction. So this is not jargon or things that only some people say. This is the official term, the official vocabulary for this. And we do that because 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 8.5, which one do you mean? And oh, by the way, graphics often have those dimensions flipped. So you're talking about a sheet of paper or you're talking about the picture that's on the sheet of paper. And it's like, stop irritating me and just use portrait and landscape. Thanks, bye. Okay, so we just do this. So landscape is very, very, very common for Excel. We just turn it sideways because very often our data is really long. If you have people's names and addresses, it's going to be really wide. First name, last name, middle initial, street address, really long. City name could be long. State, probably an abbreviation. Zip code, maybe their phone number. And you wind up falling off the edge of the paper pretty quickly. So if I turn it landscape, then I don't have to shrink it. But I can also go in here and say, hey, I want it to be 1 page wide. And I could say by, you know, however many pages tall, however big my document actually is. Also, I can go in under sheet and I can say, which way do you want to print? Do you want to go down first and then over? That's the default. Or do you want to go over first and then down? And most people are like, I don't think I'm ever going to care about that in my entire life. And that could be true, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway. So let me go back to my document. Oh, now I'm stuck in the back. Oh, okay, now I'm in the right place. All right, so here's my document. And I have customer numbers. Customer 01 through, I don't know how many people. I have lots. Okay, so I have a whole bunch of data, and then I have some numbers. Oh, they're all going to be the same number. Yay, because I can't be bothered to. And you don't want to watch me put in 200 individual numbers. All right, so now I have a bunch of information here. So imagine this goes on for hundreds of sheets of paper, and you want to be able to know, so this is their name, and this is their sales, I don't know what. And you want to be able to tell, I'm going to insert some columns. So I'm highlighting, I'm going to put in 2 columns. I highlight 2, I right click, I say insert. Boom, I get 2 more columns. This is probably going to fall off the page now. Let's see, file, print. Oh, look at that. My page 2 looks really stupid. Look, oh, wait, where is my page 2? Oh my gosh, where's my page? Oh, it's my page 6. It's my page 6. Uh-oh. So I have to go, so if I printed this, and let's pretend that there's data going across here, and this is more reasonable. I have a whole bunch of problems. First of all, at the top, I'm going to go back to my doc for a second. Notice, FYI, tangent, after I already printed it wrong, magically this line shows up. See this dashed line right here? That's the page break. And you don't see it until after you go in and look at the printing or print at least once. I find that super frustrating. It's like, I need that information now, not later. So here's my page 1, and I'm going to go into page break preview. I'm shamelessly hopping around with flow of consciousness because, hey, you can rewind. Okay, so here is page 1, so page break preview. This is how all these things tie together also. So this is one of your options, is page break preview. That's a great option. Page layout is a terrible option. It shows you this weird chunked up stuff. And then, of course, normal. Page break preview, you can also type in. It's live. You can edit in this. All right, so there's page 1. That's page 2. Trust me, it says page 2. No, it doesn't. Don't trust me. Sorry. It says page 6. It says page 6. Bad, bad. We go down first. We're in default. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. And by page 5, do I have any idea what this column is? Or this column, pretend there's data, or any of these columns? I probably no longer know. I'm going to have to flip back to that first page. So that's one thing that's super annoying. And then the other thing is, if I want to see what's happening with this person's sales, I have to go, there's my page 1, and then I want to see what Bob's sales look like. I have to flip through all these pages. Pretend I'm flipping through pages. It would take about this long. And finally get myself to page 6 to see what his data is. Can you see how that's a problem? So as soon as I have a spreadsheet that's very big at all, I can run into big, huge problems. How do I fix that? 2 things. First of all, I probably want to have page 1. I probably want to have all of this record close together. So I would like Bob's name and his other details and his sales. Pretend this is filled in. I would like to have that near them, near each other. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say page layout, page setup dialog box, one of my favorite dialog boxes in Excel. I do have favorite dialog boxes. Sheet, over and then down. Go over first and then go down. Thanks. Now this should say page 1 and that should say page 2. This should say page 3. That should say page 4. So now my stuff is closer together. So that is a situation where you might actually care, and that is a way of fixing it. The other thing that I need to do is I have name up here and I have sales up here, and I might have company and department and address and shoe size and favorite color. I don't know. I have all kinds of other info in here. Then when I get down here to page 5, I don't know what I'm looking at, right? I have to, again, flip back to page 1 to try to figure out what's going on. I don't like that. So I'm going to go into page setup. And I'm going to say sheet. And I'm going to say rows to repeat at top. And I'm going to click in it. And it's going to ask me to put in some weird formula. I've been doing Excel for probably 3 decades, close to 3 decades. And I do not know what to type in here. And I would refuse to learn it. I refuse to memorize it because, ugh, you know, I love the alleged Einstein quote when asked why he didn't know something that somebody else thought was obvious and he ought to know it, and doesn't everybody know this thing? He said, I don't like to clutter my brain with things I could look up. I don't like to clutter my brain with things I could look up, and I absolutely believe that. Okay, so I could try to type this in, or I could hit the handy dandy button, boink, and it says page setup rows to repeat at top, and it's not 100% obvious what you're supposed to do. But what you're supposed to do is click on a row, and it of course fills in the information. $1 colon $1. Great, whatever. I'm going to hit the X. Oh, it puts that in there. Okay, great. I still don't know if I've done it. Great. I'm going to say okay. Oh, nothing changed there. Oh, nothing changed there. Getting a little nervous. File, print. Let's see. Name is at the top of that page. And sales is at the top of that. Okay, those are the first pages. That doesn't count. Oh, hey, name is at the top of page 3. You can barely see it. Trust me, it's there. And sales is at the top of page 4, and name is at the top of 5, and sales top of 6, etc., etc., etc. So I have repeated those headings across all of my pages automatically, and it does not show up in your spreadsheet. This is header information, and so it doesn't appear, it doesn't jam itself in the middle of your formulas and do all kinds of other horrible things. So that is the correct way to get your information to appear. Michael has a question.
I was wondering why you don't just freeze the top. Like through, you go to view.
Oh yeah, I totally could do that for me when I'm looking at the thing on the computer. So I can totally come in here, and I think you put it below.
It's in view.
And view and freeze. Oh, and they just have a keep top row. Well, that's handy. Okay, so now let me bump this up a little bit. By the way, you can stay in print break preview, page break preview, and you can still get same magnification if you want it. Okay, so now I have this. Now as I scroll, see how they go away? They go up in, they don't go away, excuse me. They just slide up into there and slide back down. So this is fabulous when I'm working on the sheet. So I'm working on the sheet, and now I can tell, because if I have a whole bunch of weird stuff in here, like number ordered, number back ordered, number returned, number that are purple, number that are blue, number that are green. And down here, I'm like, is that purple or is that green? I don't know. And I have to flip back to the first page and yuck, or scroll to the, not a good thing. So when I'm working in the sheet, this is how you get basically the same effect, but it will not print this way. So if I have this set up to freeze so that I can scroll, and I can also do the same thing with the left column, and I can change where I put this if it's not just the first, but they have the most common thing that you would want to do easily available. However, if this is all I've done, if this is the only thing I've done is the freeze bit, when I go to print it, I'm not going to get this at the top of every page. So this is for on the screen. And the other thing that I showed you is for printing. Thanks for bringing it up, Michael,
No,
because
that's
those
very helpful.
seem the same. Yeah, thank you. Michael asks these questions. He does a good job of pretending he doesn't know, but asking awesome questions. Because yes, it's the same effect, but you have to do two separate things because it's two separate things. Okay, and the other thing I could do, of course, to deal with some of these page issues is, since I've only got this much, I could just turn it sideways, like I already showed you with landscape. Or while I'm in page break preview, if I've really only got one more column, I can accomplish that zoom thing, zoom as in rescale, resize, by just grabbing that page break and moving it. I can just yank that page break. So I'm going to undo. I'm going to do that again. I can grab this page break and move it wherever I want. Now it is going to, as I make the page bigger, it's going to shrink my text a little bit. But now I can see exactly what's going to happen very, very easily. So Excel has a lot of options for fiddling with your printing without going in and changing your font and everything. If this was Word and I wanted to shrink everything a little bit, I would have to highlight everything and I would have to change the font size, right? And if I had some things that were headings that were bigger, I would have to drop them down a little bit and then drop the rest of the stuff also down a little bit. So if this was 18, I take it down to 16. And if this was 12, I take it down to 10 maybe. And I'd have to go through the whole document and fiddle with everything. In Excel, you don't have to do that. So I can make this bigger and bolder. And as I increase and decrease the scaling, it will automatically increase or decrease right along with it. Does that make sense? If I shrink, if I went into my printing and I decided, actually, I'm going to wind up back on the page setup dialog box again because that's my favorite place. If I decide to adjust this and make it smaller, it's going to shrink all of my fonts the same amount. It's going to shrink everything in the whole file the same amount. So I don't have to go in and edit these individual things. I just make this as much different. I make my titles as much bigger as I want from the rest of this. And then when I enlarge it, just like this. So this is what happens with printing. And that is very different from Word. Okay. Oh, and notice all these things that I was doing as far as all these changes and how it's going to print. Those are on sheet 2. They didn't affect sheet 1. All right. Insert and delete. I can insert cells by right-clicking. Actually, I'm on a row, excuse me. I went up here to this letter at the top of the column and I right-clicked. And if I say insert, it adds a whole column. If I say delete, it deletes the whole column. And you just want to be careful about splitting up your formulas. So if you have a stack of numbers and they're pointing at certain cells and you go and shove more columns or more rows in, or you delete them, you can break your math. So be careful. And also if I delete, so if I have, let's do another tab. Oh, and they come right where you are. So I can move it to put it at the end. So now they're in order. See, it came up, my third one came up in a weird place. I'll just put it there. So if I have a stack of numbers, I'm going to hit tab to go to the right. By the way, I hit enter and I go down. That's significant if you are typing a column of numbers, then you want to go number enter, number enter, number enter, number enter, number enter. So if you're doing a stack of numbers, that makes sense. If you're going across a row, name, address, city, state, zip, pretend that's what that is. I hit tab to go to the next one, and that's much easier. Okay, undo, undo, undo. Actually, I'm just going to highlight, and I'm going to hit delete. And delete doesn't remove these cells, it actually does a clear. If you right click, you will notice you have insert, you have delete, and you have clear contents. In Excel, the default action for the delete button on the keyboard, the delete button, the default changes to clear contents. Same thing as inside a table in Word. Inside tables in most programs, you don't want your lines to go away. You don't want your cells to go away. So usually if you're deleting inside something like that, it has changed to clear contents. So I'm going to clear my contents. Okay. Now I have my stack of numbers. All right, let's make a stack of numbers. What am I trying to do? 1 second. I guess I'm making rows of numbers. All right, so I'll put a 2 there. Now I can make a stack of numbers going this way. So I just did extend, which I'll talk about more later. So here's the stack of numbers. And what if I want to delete this row? Now, see what's happened? It's obviously deleted it. I can undo. But also, if I come over here and I right-click on this, and I actually say delete, it asks me, what do you want to do now? Because it's going to tear that cell out of the spreadsheet. It's going to rip that cell out of the fabric of time and space. It's going to tear it out and throw it away. And that cell will no longer be there. Do you want to shift the rest of the stuff up or to the left? Did you mean to do the entire row, or did you want to do the entire column? It's going to ask you these questions. And if you answer wrong, you're going to have trouble. First of all, if you're deleting when you really want it to clear, you're going to be in trouble. So I'm going to say shift up because that's the default. Sure, why wouldn't I want to do that? Boom, that's why. So now these have all shifted up, and I don't have a blank space to put a different number in here. This isn't what I wanted. If this is what you want, great. But you have to be careful because everything on this spreadsheet going down thousands of rows, everywhere on that spreadsheet, this has now been moved up once. So if I had down here someplace where I have forgotten, I had some information down here, and it was about what people are up to at my company, my business, my whatever, my students' grades. That would be super bad. So here's all my data. And let's say I have some more information. I'm just using the extend handle. All right, so I have this block of numbers. Ooh, whoops, lots of negative numbers. All right. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do that thing again. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say delete. I'm going to say shift cells up. That should be fine, right? Scroll later. A few days later, I come down. I got to work on this. Oh, whoops. See what happened? So this has a problem now. So be careful with your deleting and inserting because you can cause these kind of, we've had a tectonic shift. We've had this huge upheaval. The Rocky Mountains have started forming in the middle of my spreadsheet. I don't want that. Okay, so be careful. Understand what those things do and use them the way you want them to be used. So insert and delete, delete versus clear. Oh, tab versus enter I just talked about. Active cell, cell range. Okay, so math. Okay, I'm going to do yet another sheet because that third one's got weird stuff in it now. And again, I'm going to drag it over because I can. Okay, so if I say 2 plus 2 and I hit enter, Excel just stares at me because I have typed in 2 plus sign 2, and that is text. I have some numbers and I have a thing that's not a number, and it just sits there. If I want to do math, I must type in an equal sign first. Always. Always an equal sign first. So Excel does it like this, equal 2 plus 2, and then I hit enter or tab. And notice how the answer, the answer appears right on top, right in the same cell. Okay? When we are doing math in school, we would say 2 plus 2 equals, and then our answer would appear after that. So that's how you do it when you're doing it on paper, yes? So there's this flow, not in Excel. In Excel, the answer goes in the same cell as the formula. That's not difficult to understand, but it is different. So I want to call your attention to it for a moment. And then also we see layers. We see the answer on top, and underneath we see the formula. So equal 2 plus 2. If I double click in the cell, I get the formula in the cell also. I can edit my formula down here in the cell, and I can edit it up here. Doesn't make any difference. Whatever is convenient at the moment. Okay, and this is what will print. Yes, there's an option someplace you can Google it for telling it to show the formulas. If you actually need to print out all of your formulas because you want to save it or check it or do something with it, that is also possible. But the default is you never see the formulas. Okay. So when I am doing math, it works best if you do it kind of like a sentence. So if I have apples, if I have red apples, and I have green apples, and I have orange apples. I don't know why I have that, but I do. Okay, and I have 5 of these, and I have 7 of those, and I have 32 of those because nobody wants to buy an orange apple. They're like, what's going on? Okay, if I want to add these together, so total apples. And you might notice some weird stuff's happening to my text also. More on that later. If I want to add this up, I'm going to say, I could do it 2 different ways. Do it 2 different ways. I'm going to copy this, copy, Control C. Notice how I get that sparkly sort of marquee select around it. That means I've highlighted it and copied it. Paste. By the way, unlike other programs, this stuff is only on the clipboard while it's sparkling. So I can paste this over and over again as long as it's actually in the clipboard. As soon as I hit escape, hear that? It says, you can't get there from here. What are you doing? What are you doing, you dork? That's not on the clipboard anymore. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Okay, fine. Didn't want to do it anyway. So the way the clipboard is in Excel is different than most other programs. Be aware. Okay, so total apples. I can do this 2 different ways. I can either write my own formula by saying, and do this as a sentence. If you can say your formula as a sentence, then you can put it into Excel. If you can't say your formula as a sentence, you need to stop, figure out on paper with a pencil what it is you're trying to do. And then once you figure out what the math is, then you can translate it into Excel. And mostly Excel is, a lot of it's the same as paper and pencil. There are some exceptions, which I'm going to talk about. Okay, so to do this, I would say total apples. So this cell is total apples equals, I hit the equal sign, equals, click this one, plus on my keyboard, this one, click, plus on my keyboard, click that one. I'm done, so I hit enter. So there's my total. And notice, if I double click my formula, if I want to check my formula, I never read the cell references because the standard issue human brain does not understand E11, F11, G11. I have to stick my fingers on the screen and figure out where E11 is and F11, and so if this is just black and white up here in the formula bar, I have to go and stick my fingers on the screen and try to figure out where these are. Really time consuming, inefficient, frustrating, distracting, bad. Okay, so I'm going to double click this and I get color. These are not training wheels for noobs. This is not for beginners or anything like that. This is for everybody with your standard issue human brain. So here we have blue plus red plus purple. So I'm looking at these colors here, blue plus red plus purple. And yeah, that looks right. So that's what I look at, is those colors. Okay, other way I could do this is I could use the magic math button. Let me make this wider enough that I can see it well. Okay, so I call that the magic math button. For all of you who've done calculus and statistics and probability, it's of course the uppercase Greek sigma, which is the summation character. And for everybody, if you tip your head to the side, it looks like a fancy M. See how if you turn your head to the left, it looks like a fancy M. I call that the magic math button. I love it. Okay, so I want to add this stuff up. I stomp on the magic math button. It says, do you want to add up that stuff? And I say, sure, by hitting enter. Boink. And it's put in my formula, and it's good, and yay. Okay, that went fast. So to do that again, delete. I come here, I hit the magic math button, and there's a drop down, and there's more choices. But the default is the one that the picture is next to. I have this picture, that's the picture that's on the button, that is next to sum, which is add stuff up. Average doesn't have a picture. That's not the one that I'm going to get. These are not the default. Min, max, count. These are not the default. That guy's the default. So when I just hit this part of the button, the picture part of the button, I get the default. When I hit the little arrow, this is a compound button. When I hit the drop down arrow, I get a menu, and I can pick it off the menu, or I can choose average or whatever else. But when I just hit the main part, I get sum. So I hit that. It says you want to add up this stuff. What stuff? This blue stuff. Now, instead of reading E15 colon G15, which means the range of cells from E15 to G15, perfectly accurate, absolutely true, not really very useful, because again, I'm going to have to be poking my screen and trying to figure out what's going on. Instead, I look at this, it's blue, that's blue. It's asking me, do I want to add up this blue stuff? And I say yes, by hitting enter or tab, and there we go. And I have a formula. And it is important to note that it will try to go up before it goes to the left. So if I have a stack of numbers, and that'll be on the thing we practice with, the simulated bookstore spreadsheet about sum and formulas and things. If you are going along and you have a choice, a stack of numbers going this way and a row of numbers going that way, it will try to add up first. So be aware. Okay. These things are not all showing. I'm not seeing, I see red apple, but I'm missing an S, I'm missing a bunch, missing a bunch. And this, as you can see, is bleeding over into the next column. That is how Excel does text. It allows it to bleed over to the right if there's room. The moment there's something in the next cell, it truncates it, it slices it off, it chops it off. All of my data is still safe and sound. I can look up here in the formula bar and all my data is fine. However, it will print like this. So if I'm making a chart out of this, insert recommended charts, pie chart, sure, why not? Say okay. You will notice in my chart, all of my text appears just fine. So if this is how I'm outputting my data, I may or may not care about how that looks. If I do care, if it really bothers me, I can highlight these rows, columns, excuse me, and I can just size to fit, or I can drag them around. Another thing that I can do, and sometimes you need to do this when you're doing a chart for a report, like you might need to do it for your final. I'm going to go again into recommended charts and choose this guy. And then I might say, oh, huh. Okay, fine. So I'm going to just retitle my chart so that I can ditch the word apples. I'm going to attack this a different way. So distribution of apples. That sounds fancy, doesn't it? Okay, so distribution of apples. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to remove the word apples. Okay. So now it says red, green, and orange. And we know they're apples because I said apples in my chart title. So there are different ways of handling these kinds of problems. And oh, also, this is going to print horribly badly. So I'm going to say this again just because it's mandatory for your final and good idea for life. I'm going to reformat this slightly, very quickly. I'm going to very quickly reformat this. Quick layout, first one. What could be quicker than the first one? Click these legend labels once to get their attention, and then drag, which is push down and pull, not click and drag. Drag. Boom. There we go. Takes me 10 times longer to say it than to do it. Okay. So there's some issues that you can run into, different ways to solve them, formulas. Go back to page 1. Let's see what I've got going. Oh, these things are not money. If I want to multiply, I'm going to do just another sheet because why not? I can. So if my taxes are 15% and I make $100 and Bob makes $200 and Fred makes $150 and Joe makes $24 and Susan makes some other amount of money. I don't know. Okay, I want to find out how much tax they have to pay. I'm going to say the tax they have to pay equals how much money they make times tangent, by the way, segue. You always have to include the multiply sign when you are doing multiplication, and it always has to be the asterisk. So it's always the asterisk for multiply. It's never an X, it's never a dot, it's never sits next to something or parentheses, all those other things that you could do in algebra and calculus and grade school math. No. No. In Excel, it's the asterisk for multiply, and it's always included. Okay, so back to this. How much tax does this guy pay, whose name I've forgotten? Bob, maybe. Makes $100 times 15%. So I'm just going to back up. So amount of tax, this cell is amount of tax, equals what they got paid times the percentage rate. And I hit enter. And now I would like to just extend that down, be the same formula. Oh no. Boy, this guy who only made $24, wow, he's got a problem. He owes millions. That's a serious problem. What went wrong? Oh my gosh. Okay, how I figure this out, instead of trying to puzzle through the absolute reference notation that I need, it gives me a headache sometimes. I mean, this one's easy, but you can get ones that are really complicated. I just do it and then I look at it. So I yank it down, it blows up, and then I double click to see where the problem is. Good one, blue here, red there. And red does not mean bad, it's just the second color. Double click here, blue here, whoops. This guy's paying 3,000 times this. Oh my gosh. What's going on down here? Oh my goodness. So blue is correct. That's where I want it to be. But red needs to always be 15%. I'm always multiplying these guys times 15%. So I'm going to come in here to my first formula. I'm going to highlight this. And now I'm going to try to do this on my keyboard. So function and then F4. Yes. Okay. So I had to hold down my FN key and tap my F4. And now it slams in the dollar signs in both parts. So dollar signs, so absolutely E, absolutely 5. Great. So that means it's always going to be this cell with the 15%. Now let's see if I got it right. So I grab this, I drag it down again. Notice none of this stuff changed because they're not linked. Okay, they're linked in my head, but they're not linked in Excel's head. Drag that down, boom. Looks more reasonable. Let's see if it's correct. Double click. Oh, hey, blue times red. That's correct. Yay. And pretty quickly you learn that if you've got an interest rate, it's pretty much always going to be the absolute part, or at least that part will be absolute. Because I want, just like in my head, I say, yeah, 100 times 15%, 200 times 15%, 150 times 15%. I'm going to go blah, blah, blah times 15%. So this one times 15%, this one times 15%. And Excel has this feature so that you can do that. So again, here's how these colors are super helpful. And if I'm doing a function, so formulas are things that you write yourself, and functions refer to these things that we get from Excel, like sum. If I want to add up how much taxes everybody was paying, I've got this, it's a percentage. Oh, stop being a percentage, just be a number. Okay. Watch out for how things are formatted. Okay. So a function is always an equal sign, and then a word or an abbreviation, and then parentheses. Now, in this case, it is saying that this cell equals the sum of this blue stuff. Okay? We did a different one that doesn't have arguments in the parentheses. They're called arguments because that's what they're called. I didn't name it. Okay, so this one is the today function. It tells me what is today according to the system clock. And as long as your clock is correct, it will be good. So it's equal today and parentheses. And then, like I showed you guys really briefly, I can do math based on dates. I can do math based on today. So tomorrow is today plus 1. Yesterday would be today minus 1, and so forth and so on. So all functions are equal sign. All math that starts with an equal sign. All functions start with an equal sign, then they have a word or an abbreviation, and then they have parentheses, and that is the way they work. Oh, and these dollar signs are not money. Yeah, we're often, very often adding up money. So this is dollar amount, dollar amount. Yes, we're doing math on money. However, these dollar signs in a cell reference, they don't mean money. They mean absolute reference. So I'm looking at this red cell, this 15% absolutely, or always. So this blue can slide around when I drag this formula down, but the red does not slide around. Dates, tab versus enter. Tab goes to the right, enter goes down. Active cell, cell range. Colors and formulas, formulas versus function. Printing, oh my goodness. Any questions? So have I convinced you that Excel thinks differently than we do? I hope I've convinced you, and I hope I have pointed out things that are very often gotchas. So all these things that I've talked about come from chronic problems that students always have when they're doing Excel. So I hope that this preview um, will get you started on the right foot. All right. I think I'm done, Michael. My outro. Go
Thank you.
forth, make good life choices.
We will, thanks to you.
Thank you.